call this meeting of the South Refuge School District together at 6 o'clock. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Baker, will you call the roll, please?
Nisha Early.
Present.
Stephen Baker present. Cheryl Flesher.
Present.
Laurie Hicks.
Present.
Daniel Winston.
Present.
Amanda Flesher.
Present.
Shirley Tolliver.
Present. Next item on the agenda is the Board Superintendent Communications, Mr. Bob.
Thank you, President Tolliver and members of the Board of Education. I do have a couple of communications this evening. First and foremost, for those of you that have been in buildings this week, you may have seen our sinking fund poster boards. I had the opportunity, I saw a couple of board members yesterday afternoon while I was traveling to the high school. I had an opportunity yesterday to speak with 4 of our buildings yesterday about our upcoming sinking fund election, which is a renewal, which as you know, we talked about at the board table, and the board unanimously supported our efforts to go out for our sinking fund renewal. It is quickly approaching. It is on May 3rd, 2022. And so I had an opportunity to speak with 4 of the staffs yesterday, and then I will be going to our remaining 2 schools on Tuesday of next week. And so just wanted to draw your attention to this, because as you walk in and out of our buildings, you will see this featured. This one is featured at the front of central office when you come in normally. I would invite you to take a picture of it so that you have the information accessible at your fingertips should you get questions from the community when you're out and about, so that you have it readily accessible. But I also wanted to share with the board that we have mailers going out next week. And so that is very intentional, and to line it up with the timing of absentee ballots. So absentee ballots are available late next week from the township office, and so we're trying to time it perfectly with the information as well as the absentee ballots. So just to connect your eyes to that, you'll notice it's the same colors that we had from last year's bond, but as all of you know, we project approximately $10.5 million with the renewal over the next 10 years, so which alleviates the pressure on our general fund, or leaving the general fund to allocate towards people and programming. So there we have that. And then also behind Reverend Baker and Amanda is, you'll notice each of you have your own construction helmets, because as you know, we are in construction season. And so you'll notice the South Redford swag, but we also are representing our partner, Barton Mallow, or they're representing us, depending on how you want to look at that. You also have your own Barton Mallow goggles. And we also have maps that coincide with the renovation that's taking place right behind this wall here in the source space. And so the thinking is tonight, after our board workshop with Dr. Weber and Joanne, that we would have an opportunity to put our hard hats on and put our glasses on and take a quick stroll with our new map so that you can see what's happening in the source space. It's pretty exciting. Just even in the past week, they have the studding up for most of the offices that are going to be going up, and you can see where the student space is going to be and what the staff space is going to be, where the staff space is going to be, as well as student space, and then also seeing the overlap of both student and staff spaces too. So pretty exciting. The project's on track to be completed sometime in June or July. So we'll hopefully have an opportunity to put this stuff on later and take a little tour just around the corner. That's all I have this evening, Madam President.
Thank you.
I have a question. On the glasses, I noticed some are orange and some are clear. Is there a difference? Like, will they go over our glasses or?
So that's a great question, Lori.
Neither will go over the glasses.
I don't think either will. Yeah, correct. The orange ones, though, they are a little bit more pliable, where the clear ones are more solid. So you might have to arm wrestle one another. Or if you would like a pair of each, we can make that happen too. But
Okay.
I don't, to your question, Lori, I don't think that they'll go over the top. I think it's in place of, and then if you would rather wear your own glasses, of course, that's okay too. So, yes.
What are the two remaining schools that you need to go to?
Pierce and Adams. Yeah.
Next item on the agenda, comments from the audience.
We have none, Madam President.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consider employment contract for superintendent of schools. Mrs. Hicks.
Yes, well, the committee, who consisted of Amanda, Misha, and myself, met together with Mr. Bob and Dr. Weber, and we came out, with a decent contract. One of the committee members thought it would be higher, one thought it would be lower, and the other one thought it was right in the range. So we just kind of compromised a bit and went in the center. Pretty much other than that, he is staying with the general administrative compensation package. The only thing that is a little bit different is that we are going to pay out his existing bank at the rate that they were incurred by, so he starts with a net zero bank, which that's not in the contract, but we didn't feel it really was required to be in the contract. That's all I have.
We have,
Madam President?
Yes.
Are we going to move it, or would you like comment first?
no, I would like to move it first.
I will move the resolution.
I'll second.
Are there any questions? It's been moved in second.
Madam President?
Yes.
I wrote this out in keeping with what I've done lately, just to make sure that my thoughts are portrayed accurately. I sent an email to the whole board last week inquiring why we would both discuss and consider the potential contract with our new superintendent, Mr. Bob Ravetsky, which is not in accordance with our board norms. You told me on the phone that you didn't see any conflict and could not find it in our norms. I have a copy of for each of us of those norms dated March 2021. Norm 15 says, normally issues brought to the board table are first discussed in one meeting with the vote to occur at a subsequent meeting. In special circumstances and at the board's discretion, an agenda item may be brought to a vote at the same meeting in which it was first introduced. End of quote. So I'm not sure what you missed. You told me that the rationale was to be able to post the assistant superintendent position. The approval of Mr. Bob Ravetsky's contract is not a special circumstance. It is not right, in my opinion, to discuss and consider such an important decision in one meeting, and while tonight is technically an open meeting, it is a workshop not designed to handle routine business and certainly not a decision of this importance. If I were a stakeholder without a front row seat, I would suspect that this board was determined to approve the contract without input and under the radar. That is what it appears to be. We literally have a regular meeting next week in 5 days. Your notion that this must be enacted immediately tonight does not align with the facts.
Thank you. Mrs.
With the
Hicks?
emails I have received,
Yes.
it was not done quietly to avoid people searching it, because otherwise I wouldn't have received emails. So, and we have done things in the past when we need to get things moving, which is what we're doing here.
Do I have anyone else that has any comments? Okay, it's been moved in second. Can you call the roll call vote, please, Mr. Baker?
Sure. Misha Early,
Aye.
Stephen Baker, nay. Cheryl Flesher, Lori Hicks,
Aye.
Daniel Winston,
Aye.
Amanda Flesher,
Aye.
Shirley Tolliver.
Aye. We have 6 ayes and 1 nay. The contract is approved. Next item on the agenda is the workshop, Dr. Weber and Joanne.
Okay, first of all, congratulations, Jason.
Thank you, Dr. Weber.
I'd like to, number one, reintroduce my colleague, sometimes partner in crime, Joanne Andres. A little bit of background. Joanne's a former superintendent of schools at West Bloomfield, also in Connecticut. I keep telling her she just couldn't hold a job. Together, we've done numerous workshops throughout the metropolitan area, as well as work in multiple districts on different issues that they happen to be facing. We've worked together independently. Aside from MLI, we've worked together on numerous projects. She's currently one of the lead people at Michigan State University K-12 outreach program, spending a lot of time working in the Flint community schools and East Point schools. And I'd have to tell you, truthfully, she's bailed me out so many times on things that we've worked on together. All of the successes of the board over the past couple of years haven't gone unnoticed. I continue to follow, the school district, I read your minutes and so forth, and the work that you've done through the pandemic, the work you've done to maintain the enrollment and programs, curriculum, the successful bond issue, it's just been remarkable. But I would tell you that from time to time, it's a good thing to check back in on some of the processes and procedures that you have in place, just to ensure that we keep doing the things that great boards do. And I'm not talking about districts tonight, I'm talking about great boards of education. And I put you people right up there. So tonight's one of those check-in nights. And there's several themes that you'll see throughout the evening, and we'll keep coming back to those over the next couple of hours. This is not meant to be just us presenting. This is meant to be questions, interaction, and so forth. And we're going to start with a little warm-up exercise that Joanne has put in place. So with that, I just turn this program over to Joanne, and I just taken off.
Not in real life. Well, congratulations. And good evening, members of the Board of Education. Thank you for having us here tonight. I've always admired you from afar, and it feels so good to be here because you were always doing good things. And you were out there, because I've been in education for about 40 years. So I've been watching you from when I was in River Rouge. You were like one of those star districts. When I moved to different places, you were always that district that was the beacon and doing such wonderful things. And so it's an honor to be here with you all tonight. So thank you for inviting us to be a part of this. I want you to relax for a minute, okay? Because I'm going to make you a little bit uncomfortable. Boards have, first of all, let me also say, thank you for choosing to serve. These are tough times, and for you, all of you to still be here. And the thing that I love about boards like yours is we can have different opinions, but the business and our interaction with each other can continue to proceed. And it's wonderful to be able to have multiple perspectives on whatever the issue is. So I applaud you for being that kind of a board, that you could accept that and be willing to move forward with the business at hand. And so tonight, we're going to give you an opportunity to get to know each other. somewhat differently. When we saw you coming in, you were hugging each other, you were giving each other gifts, so it's like, y'all must like each other, right? So that was kind of nice to see as you came into the meeting tonight. So what I'm gonna do for something, ask you to do for me, is I have a one-pager on your desk. Now, this isn't, don't take this to think that this is scientific, but there are a lot of elements in terms of the characteristics of individuals, this has been researched, that gives us an idea of what your strengths and weaknesses are as you think about how you lead and how you are and who you are and how you're wired. So I'm going to give you all of 5 minutes because I don't want you to dwell on this. I want you to go through and Bill can, oh, I'm supposed to do my own movement, right? Hold on. You have the document in front of you. Which one am I using? The little one here, right?
Yep,
Okay. And I press down to go up, right?
that's correct.
First of all, you all know that you're all here in the house. Oops. Okay, so you have the sheet in front of you. So you're going to go across each line. And I want those of you whoever's here tonight who like to participate in this, please be a part of this. So if the characteristic that is like, I like authority, if that's your strongest, you're going to put a 4 there. If your next one is, I'm sensitive to feelings, you're going to put a 3 there. 2, and then 1's going to be the least that you are. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to go across and quickly respond. Don't overthink it, okay? Bill, can you help me keep track of 5 minutes?
I've got it.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you. Going straight across, straight across. And then when you finish, add up your totals, okay, at the very bottom. I'm sorry.
Is this from John Trent?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
How did you know? I love you. Interesting. That everybody asked that before. What was the question? Who did the survey? Yes, where it came from. How are we doing, Bill?
We're doing fine. We've got another minute and a half.
Good. Good. When you finish, just do your totals at the bottom, okay?
You said don't think too hard.
That's right. Because you get overthinking it, it's just. You did this with the person on the night. It was
About
like
it,
15
Joanne.
minutes, huh? Okay, well, everybody's wrapping up near the end on the thing. They're adding up right now. You guys are good. Boy, you're moving nicely. All right. Anybody still need a couple more minutes? Are we there? Okay. Circle your dominant. Circle the highest number, because that highest number is your dominant. That's the area that you're strongest in, the highest. And then put a square around that your second highest number. So while you're a combination of all of those, there's some that you tend to lead more to than others. How many of you have done like the Myers-Briggs? Yeah. Now I can never remember my letters. There are 3 letters that there are 4 letters or 3 letters in Myers-Briggs. There are 4 letters. I never remember my letters. But for some reason I can remember this, and it does align with my Myers-Briggs pretty much in terms of, high on wire. 2 colors. Have any of you done 2 colors? Okay. So you kind of get a feel for this is similar to that, right? And so tonight, this gives us an opportunity to take a look at the areas where you are like that. This is different. We even do this with students too, so this is kind of cool that we get a chance to take it down to the lower level. So I want you to think about, if you are an L, okay, I'm going the wrong way. There you go. So if you are an L, you are a lion. Is your dominant lion? How many lions do we have in here?
Yeah, that would be you. Even Dr. Weber's laughing.
The name tags tonight were for you to put your lion, your, okay. I didn't say that earlier, so, it's okay, we got,
I was wondering, because we had our names.
okay, so if you are a lion, write lion on your name tag. How many otters do we have in here? Oh my God. So you got a couple of otters, very good. Any golden retrievers? Not one. This is like the 3rd workshop that I've done, and I've not had one golden retriever. Interesting.
All right.
Okay. We know better, don't we? Gentle, soft, kind, sweet. And beavers. How many beavers do we have? Wow, you guys have a really nice mix of personality types. Just last week we did this workshop. We had a room full of principals, and they were all lions.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine they were having difficulty in their district, which is why they invited us in. And when they saw this, they went, oh, no wonder we're having this. So now we're doing some work with that group to kind of work on that. So I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to give you further directions. Put your name, your animal on there, and in the corner, like beavers, go here. Golden retrievers, the one will be there again tonight. Our lions go over here, and our otters go here. So if you can try to get up, I'm gonna let you can sit the rest of the night, but right now I'm gonna make you a little bit uncomfortable to get up and move around and talk to each other, other than at the board table.
Chris, you need a name tag?
I'm the shadow, I'm going to my office.
So in your group, once you find your group, not one golden retriever again.
That's so close. 3 points away.
Were you really? Yeah.
How many points away were you 2? Just 2.
Really?
She was only 2 points
2
away.
points, interesting.
There you go. So there you go.
Okay. And otters are over here.
37 as a lion.
Oh, so our scores are alike. That's interesting. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, together at the table, talk about the strengths of your personality type. Talk about the strengths, and does that really kind of coincide with who you, some of the characteristics that you perceive yourself as having? You just have that conversation among yourselves, please. Have the conversation among yourselves about the personality type. What are the strengths of your team, of you, that you can contribute to this team? What can you contribute to this team with your personality type? Look at the strengths that you bring. Think about that. You're not? Interesting, right? So talk about what strength does that bring to your team then, to your board team? With those kinds of, what do you do? What value do you bring to this team with those personality strengths? Talk about it among yourselves.
Are you supposed to be like really strong and one of the because all was really kind of in the same area.
You're right. You're never all in one. This may be a little bit what down, but this is where I am also. My numbers are like this.
I want someone
Like that's what you're talking
like 40 and you're like 7. I'm kind of
No, because we're a combination of all of us.
Yeah.
A combination of all, but this is where you're dominant though. That's your strong.
Right.
Because I had a hard time with these two. I was kind of like 4-3, 4-3.
Exactly. You see how it played out there?
Yeah.
But this won out in terms of, and it may be, if you took it again, it might flip.
Yeah.
So you're looking at both of those as a strength that you bring to this board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because some of these things irritate me. Because like I get these things without trying because it's
That's like you're wired.
like enjoy calculating like I'm talking about I don't want it. You're gonna be kind of so I didn't like that.
Okay.
I don't agree with the motivated by part. I think I'm motivated by this, right. I think I have other motivations.
So we're just supposed to talk about what
Yeah,
range of strengths, how can you bring that to the board?
What does your strength add to this Board of Education?
There you go.
What does your strength add?
I don't know how my numbers got to do with your work, because it seems like some of the things I'm definitely not, and some of them I am, so that's fine. Like, y'all came up like, that's definitely me, I'm just like, see, that's not definitely me.
No, there's a couple things that are like, this isn't, I'm not as much this, that's other things. So, yeah, oh yeah, we know that. But I mean, it's not everything, so don't overthink it.
Don't overthink it.
Yeah, we might be right between, you know.
Because I get high on that one. I get high on that one. I
Can you write your name?
Emotional.
Well represented.
I'm a negative 20 on that.
But you're passionate,
Yeah, but the emotional part, I'm passionate.
Although then he's why don't you see those together?
Yeah, I was just like, emotional, my wife would kick me in my butt if I said anything.
We just had, Linda and I just went over it and it really, I mean, it's pretty much, it just.
Yeah, I'm a natural extrovert, so the outgoing.
Yes, that is true for me too. I am way more.
Yeah, but
So what really
everything
are
I
you?
do is out in people talking about you. That's really true. I'm not conceited about who I am.
Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely
Outgoing,
You're
yeah.
definitely not a good
Mr. Sketch.
Right, and I think
I believe in Misha, you're like a true otter. What was your score?
31.
Oh, there you go.
But I think the strongest is.
You're a otter too?
Now, see, I was.
Lion and otter. Yeah. And so when first reading the question, I think I wanted to be correct on that.
We all can't be told figures are nothing.
Like you are like true otter, you should be like 35.
Right.
Whatever the highest score is.
I am all of them. I think I'm more optimistic
So what do you bring, what does that characteristic bring to this board then? When you think about the work that you all have to do? And we look at some of the strengths
Right.
about that. How does that coincide with you?
Yeah.
You all have this in your packet, so you'll have everybody's, okay, everybody's. Can you read some of those out loud to us?
Basic disposition, fast paced, people
Oh,
oriented.
that might
That's
explain like the work I like.
Okay, motivated by recognition and improving on the habits.
But I do want to, I do want to promote on this, and I'm going to be recognized. You know what I mean?
I like to do things
Right.
behind the
Behind the
scenes,
scenes.
yes.
Thank you.
Time management, others focus on the future and have a tendency to rush to the next.
My husband. Let's do today.
So who does that?
Pretty much.
Me.
I have to really have deadlines to make sure I understand that.
Communication style, enthusiastic and stimulating.
No.
often one way, but can inspire and
You know? Inspire and motivate others. You know, like, like I was taking Linda's in administration, but I'm looking forward to
So my theory would go into the next two.
That's called.
One was Lang and one was.
It's just in any group that you're in, you
In
know.
The Golden Case.
As he walks away.
But overall, a lot is really right on.
And that could be something, a combination of everything.
Y'all can be the, see, y'all can be the end part, though, I'm not the end of it.
All of the types, so you can kind of see who's your cut down.
Each one of them.
Right,
The other categories.
Sure.
Mine was next to us.
Okay, so you see how, that's what I was. Really? One golden retriever, I'm not having it.
So, does learning and how you develop sometimes send you into a specific category?
Maybe. Part of it is how you learn it. You move into roles sometimes based on your personality type and your strengths and what satisfies you, right? So if these are the things that you are, then that you gravitate to certain and you do the numbers, right? So,
I do too, I'm the treasurer.
okay.
Golden retriever's different, I look at the golden retriever like, I see why, I mean, that's.
Two of us, but, you know.
How about we give you about 5 more minutes to continue that conversation, okay? And then we're gonna come back together and share out. Okay,
I in some ways, it makes me think of a meeting today. It's like, sure, we can do this time, right? Maybe not. I'm usually disorganized.
At your table, you'll have a packet of everybody.
I do rely on others.
So you'll have
And you guys
that.
are assuming I did my math correctly because I don't use that part of my brain.
I was gonna look at what my.
The golden retriever.
It's pretty close.
I'm extremely disorganized. I'm extremely disorganized.
But she said don't even think it's so. And going based on these specific words that were chosen. So I was like, if it had changed to a different adjective, I think that's
I hate feelings. I do. I don't want to hear about no feelings, give me some facts. That's how I roll, but anyway.
So you'll have that, so as we talk in a few minutes about what you read, you may want to just kind of mention some of this as well. You know, you see yourself as a leader.
That's wild.
Not a whole lot.
No.
sensitive and sensitive.
I'm gonna come back together now, everybody. Can we come back together? We'll all stay.
Enterprising, I was like, am I an enterprising person? Like,
I talk about very sensitive, just regular stuff about it. But it was in comparison to the other. Yep.
All right, okay.
and then I wonder how they decided which one
I gotta go see my
would be. This is, I would assume that, like,
Was that your subdominant?
Yeah.
Please check it out. You want to take a look at your subdominant, take a look at that. Note like all the types in the packet that's on your table. But take a look at your subdominant if you did not do that. You got your subdominant?
Yes.
My dominant was.
I was within 2 points in all.
Oh, so really? So you're really just so you're so kind of values, right? We can talk about that just real quickly.
Within 2 points.
Yeah.
It might be interesting for you just to, and some of them, you can do
It's interesting.
Yeah.
And then Linda ends up, you were looking board two,
Yeah.
3 and 3 this
Someone might
way,
full
which is,
version, but
this is higher.
I think
And then
full
Linda
version, whatever.
ended up where I was. Both financial and mine have similar characteristics.
Yeah, it's called this.
Very close to being a lion. You are?
It's in the package.
So let's, kind of come back to the other. We have a lot of serious work to do after this.
Yeah, it's right there.
How close were you?
Mine? I had, I was really out on deep. But these two were.
But it is, you know, when I look at work with examples, it was. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's all of the
I found.
What were we?
It is. Mistakes in the contract.
That's my second.
That's the kind of
That's
stuff.
because Bill just a couple
They had a big one over there for you.
Really was.
The lion is
Yeah.
my third defined.
Is it? Are you reading into my characteristics? She's acting up. They are, they're saying how close those characteristics are. You know, but like Linda said, she was surprised Amanda was a beaver, not a lion. Whereas he said, well, they've all raised me independently.
Okay, so,
I probably have them in all.
Here we go, let's get back together again if you don't
What they would tell you, I was the lion.
Okay, so what I'm gonna ask each one of you to do, now I'm like, it's just like with the class of the kids, right? You get them up, it's like, okay, now try to rein them back in. So, we're gonna go around the room and just say, what value does your personality type bring to this board? Can you see now you're different, which is good? You have balance on this board. So when you're dealing with issues, you're gonna get multiple perspective, which is good and healthy. And so I've seen that in action tonight here, and I just love how you all are as a board. So let's talk now about what value, can I call you Daniel?
That's what my mama called me. So
Okay then. I'm in good company then. What value does your type bring to this board? And we think about who you are. What value do you bring here tonight?
I'm really big on accountability and responsibility. Those are my key buzzwords within this. So it's like accountability and responsibility.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And so when you're in that realm, when you're having discussions and so forth, you're going to gravitate to that side of the discussion and when issues come up, in other words, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. All right, how about you?
Yeah, I was a beaver, and I guess it's like the analytical, detail-oriented, methodical and exhaustive. I know I can do that. So, yeah.
But you had a subdominant that seemed kind of strong, though, didn't you?
Yes.
Tell us about that. So again, what does that contribute to this board?
Well, my subdominant was Golden Retriever, and it's stable, empathetic. The biggest thing on that is you care more about people than the work.
Is that you?
Oh, yeah.
So when you hear her speaking at the table or when discussions, that's where you're going to probably naturally gravitate toward, right? Yeah. So recognize that, and so don't see that as a flaw. That's how she's wired, and that's how she's going to represent herself when she's in a discussion. Very good. Anything else to add to it?
Just the other one that I saw in there afterwards, it says puts people above projects, but extremely loyal.
That's it. And that's a golden retriever, yeah. Very loyal. Thank you for lifting that for us. Very good. Girl.
I'm laughing, my board could comment on mine. I am achievement-driven and goal-oriented. I like challenges, but I'm driven to complete projects quickly and efficiently. I believe, why put off
till tomorrow, something I can get done today and keep moving forward.
Because I need to think about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there, you might get some pushback because I like to get things done and move on to the next project.
It depends on what it is.
Oh my goodness.
Sometimes you start things before you finish other things.
And mother-daughter talking.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, this is a, yeah, it's a.
Okay, thank you very much
It's a
for
different thing.
enlightening me.
But my subdominant was the otter, you know? Outgoing, motivational, I mean, dramatic, yeah, some people can say I can get very dramatic. So I could see all those qualities in me, but I do laugh at the lion, because even before reading, just my mind gravitated toward the lion. So all those creatures.
Help the superintendent see, how is he gonna interact with you all? Because how he may interact with Daniel may be different, how he's gonna interact with you, Cheryl, right? Because your styles are different. I used to have a board member who used to irritate the heck out of me. I thought she did it to me on purpose. And then we finally did one of these things and I realized she just needed, her style was different. And once I started to work toward her style, we went to lunch together occasionally, you know? So it was that disconnect that I was not understanding. So you get a chance the first night you're on the job to kind of hear how your board members are wired, which is good. Thank you for being open and honest about that. Misha, how about yourself?
It says people oriented. I am definitely that. You know, like I need people, like, you know, to be around and all of that. And it also says that I am very loving and encouraging and less under pressure, which is true. I try to get out of that altogether. You know, I don't, because the other side of that might be something I can't control yet. You know what I mean?
I do.
Anything might fly out of my mouth when I'm under pressure. So I try not to get there. But it also says that I'm, I don't know if I'm motivated by recognition more so than approval of others. Not the recognition part, but the approval of others. I still think that that's still a big part of me.
That's okay.
But I love people. I love to talk to them. I love to feel what they're saying because I listen to people. And instead of, you know, I just feel things when they speak, so I can understand a whole lot more, I think, than maybe some people can.
And when the superintendent is putting committees together, the board's putting committees together, you want to keep in mind that you have those multiple perspectives in the group. Thank you very much. Shirley, how about yourself?
I'm optimistic. And I like people.
Okay.
But I try to keep things at an even tone. I try to keep things, I like to be precise. I like to keep things moving. But I really like to, if something goes helter-skelter, I try to get it back to even tone.
And that's definitely that otter style. Very good. Thank you very much. Stephen.
So unlike, well, yeah, it is
Okay.
Steve, because unlike Daniel, my mom is the only one who calls me Steven. So I landed on the Beaver pretty strongly so. 35, and the next two were tied, Lion and Golden Retriever at 23. Very much detail-oriented, accurate, want to be precise, good listener. Where I struggle a little bit, because not only by choice but also by profession, I am very much people-oriented, and this is saying that it's not so much the Beaver, much more of the task-oriented. So I think that's where I would differ a little bit with it in the conversation.
It's not that you're not dominant there. You might have elements of that with you, but that's not your dominant at all. And so that can happen because that comes up in one of your subgroups, right?
Sure.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Beaver.
Yep.
Okay, Amanda.
I got the Beaver because I'm detail oriented. I like tasks to be clearly defined and everything to be like planned out, like it has a plan, and I'm a good listener and yeah, very detailed.
So you all had that kind of in common in your group as you were there discussing that. You saw the elements of that. Thank you very much. And Superintendent.
So it sounds like a rerun. Two of my fellow Beavers are right here and then Lori across the table. But similarly, for me, it was the analytical side as well as the responsible side, detail-oriented as well as factual. We had great conversation over there, and when reading the descriptions, oftentimes it was like looking in a mirror. But at the same point in time, there was several things that Steve pointed out that we didn't necessarily connect with, and then that's what spurred on conversation about our next dominant one. Interestingly enough, for mine, I was within 2 points for all 4. But Beaver was the top one.
And so when you think about working with your Beavers on this board, those are going to be the people on your board who are going to need more information. You might be making your decision and everybody else is just fine, but you'll find out that your Beavers might need more information. They may need a clear explanation, and they're not going to just go along to go along because they want the facts, they want evidence, they want it. Is that kind of like, you see yourself in that way?
Yes.
So keep that in mind and as you interact with your board. Ladies behind me? Linda?
I was a Lion. I think it was pretty spot on.
Okay.
The weaknesses, impatient, blunt. It says I'm a poor listener. I like to think that maybe I'm not a poor listener, but perhaps I am, so maybe that's an area for improvement.
Okay.
Demanding, that came up as a weakness, and I'm definitely demanding.
Oh, okay.
Strengths, gets results.
Okay.
I can be a risk taker, but generally not. So,
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Amy.
Amy, okay. Amy.
No, I appreciate it. So I was an otter as well.
Okay.
Within a couple points of golden retriever. I think, on the strength side, it's that, wanting to be optimistic and enthusiastic and, problem solve through things for sure. In the other direction, I think I do rely on others for details.
Okay.
It's more of a consensus, than being obsessing myself with the details. I'd rather not obsessing, sorry, but perseverating on it because I almost question whether or not I'll have them all. So just relying on others to provide those. That's one of the things that sticks out.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Did you take the test or you actually did leave and?
I actually did leave.
Okay.
Interesting to see where you came in at.
To be exposed later, right? Yes, sir.
I'll do it. Chris called himself the zookeeper. Which I agree
You
with.
are so accurate.
Also decide if anybody eats food or water.
Dale, thank you for lifting that. Thank you all very much. Again, this was an opportunity for you to interact together as a board and to think about how you process, how you receive, and how you deliver information. So now you can understand maybe why one person on your board may behave differently than you are, see something from a different perspective than you do. And that's what we're hoping tonight did for you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The other way, right?
Can we go the other way?
Yep, let's go the other way. Let's move forward, okay?
Updating the tests and stuff.
Okay.
Or have that.
Oh, one more.
That's just its origin.
One more. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I know it's a kind of a fun little exercise, and but I do want you to understand the importance of it because we are different, and we all process things differently, and it's nobody's fault. We come from different backgrounds, different perspectives, and we look at things differently, and that's all right. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit further on. It kind of reminds me. Last night, I was I'm a member of the Rotary Foundation, and we've got a sizable amount of money. And one of the things that we do is to donate money to a lot of causes. We do it locally, we do it nationally, we do it internationally. And we're toward the end of our budget year, and we've got several $1,000s left, and we know that there's going to be some requests coming in. But we got a request last night from an international group asking for aid for citizens of Ukraine. And every one of these personalities was present that night. We've got 2 engineers on the board, and they immediately wanted to know the metrics. And so, what do you mean metrics? Well, how many people is it going to? Well, hell, we don't know. Nobody can. Is it 2.5 million that we're going to help, or what? And every group was represented. Fortunately, I think most everybody was either maybe secondarily or maybe thirdly a golden retriever. And compassion ran out the world today. But it was just interesting to watch the group dynamics, and it was so interesting, particularly from someone like me who thinks about these kind of things, about where people were coming from and how, through consensus, they kind of reached where they needed to be. And in fact, at the end, somebody decided to up it by a few thousand. So, and everybody agreed, so it was kind of interesting. I can't help but thinking, as I read the mission statement, about what the role of the board is in creating policies and providing governance to the district. And that's what we're going to spend a lot of time on the rest of the evening. The board operating norms, that's kind of small, but your operating norms, I'll read just a couple on this. Remember always, that's number 1, that upper left-hand corner, that the board members' first and greatest concern must be for the educational welfare of the students attending the schools. Number 1. No matter what else we do, that's kind of where we have to wind up. And as the mission statement says, we recognize that the role of the board is to govern and oversee the management of the district. And we do that by setting the policies and then delegating the authority to the superintendent for the day-to-day operations. And we'll talk more about that as we go on this evening. But then we talk about, and these are your norms, not mine. These are South Redford board norms about working together as a team. And when you're building a team, I'm thinking of a baseball analogy, you probably don't have all right-handed hitters. You probably got a couple right-handers, some left-handers, same with pitchers. And in this board, it's got Lions, you've got Otters, you've got all kinds of people on the board. And that's what makes it, that's the strength. That's where the strength comes from. And you need to review your norms on an annual basis, minimally, because it's so easy to deviate. God, it's easy. Something comes up that doesn't quite fit, and all of a sudden we get into side discussions and so forth. And that's normal, and that's why we have to keep coming back to it. And other things that fall into the board norms, of course, are upholding the final majority of the board. And when the board votes, and if it votes in the affirmative, that's what the board does. And individually, your individual parents, your individual citizens, and unless there's a quorum, you're not a board. But once you're a quorum, you're a board, and then the expectations are just a little bit different. And we'll kind of talk about those a little bit. Whoops, what did I do?
Well, I don't know what you did this time.
Help.
This is.
Okay. Okay, so what makes a great school board member? Just looking at each of those for a minute. And number one, you're going to be setting policies that affect your child and your school. Your child are all the children, not just yours. You set the vision and the goals for the school district. You've got it in your mission statement. It's on your website. It's in every building. So you've done that. You can't do it alone. And we know that. You got all kinds of people that do that work. You got superintendents, assistant superintendents, business people, curriculum people, teachers, bus drivers, all of us work together to make that happen. Everybody's got some unique talents. And here's just a little turn and talk, just a couple of you. Do we want to do it as lines or honors or just?
Just person sitting next to the.
Yeah, so let's just do a little bit of discussion. Effective board members contribute their unique talents, but turning and talking, what's the most difficult lesson you've learned about being a board member so far?
Always stay the high road.
Always, where have I heard that?
Can't imagine.
Always stay on the high road. Others, what are some of the more difficult things you've learned?
I guess that's the same as Lori said, stay in neutral.
Okay,
Decisions aren't always popular.
I can abide by that.
Yeah.
Others,
Building relationships based on trust.
okay,
Communication.
boy, all of those. Anybody else? You know, all of those are so valid. And as Joanne started tonight, thanking you for being board members. God, it's not easy being a board member. It never has been. But believe me, when you're dealing with pandemics, when you're dealing with, you know, going back 100 years ago when we were closing schools or merging schools, those are not easy times. And it just made some very difficult conversations. Okay, what do school boards do? I remember walking into an elementary classroom one time, and somebody asked me what I did. And of course, you know, pretty difficult thing to answer because I was just kind of hanging out with these kids, and what did they know? And they knew more than I did about it. But you have to make sure that the desires of the community are being met, and responsibilities are setting the vision, and we've talked about this, and we're going to keep hammering that all night, and the goals for the district. We're going to adopt policies. You're going to hire and evaluate superintendent, which you did tonight. You're going to adopt and oversee an annual budget, and you're going to manage a collective bargaining process for the employees. And that's pretty darn critical. And I know you've got some collective bargaining coming up. And a little bit later on tonight, we're going to talk about some of the pressures that you may be under as this carries on. Typically, you're going to have, you know, your agenda items. You're going to have your consent agendas and approve the calendars and so forth, and adopting curriculum. But at the end of the day, your district priorities is academic achievement. You know, it's understood we're going to have a safe and orderly environment, and all of those things. We're going to treat people fairly and so forth. But at the end of the day, we've got to be able to point to success with what we're doing with kids. And that's kind of your oversight. So what do school boards do? You know, that's pretty awesome responsibility as an oversight. Okay, signs of effective school board members. a lot of these are self-evident. You have clear vision for the district. You communicate, the actions to the community. When I say you communicate the actions, you communicate the actions of the board. Not your individual thoughts, the actions of the board. Because once the board acts, that's what you're communicating. We've highlighted, great school board members work as a team. Let's just say that again. Great school board members work as a team. They collaborate well and are respectful of other board members and the superintendent. That's why we're here tonight, to kind of we're going back over these norms. And these norms are critical. And believe me, Joanne and I have both gone to enough school districts where all of this was not in place. And it was just made for some very, very difficult times, difficult meetings, board members not happy with each other, community not happy with the board. Great school board members adopt a fiscally sound district budget, and you've done that. You've done that consistently through the years. You've asked the right questions. You ask, you're focusing what's best for all students. When you're asking what's best for all students, that goes from the hiring practices, it goes from your bond issue, the kind of things that you're using the money for in the bond issue. It transcends all of those pieces. And finally, great school board members advocate at the local level, state level, and national level, and I know that you all have been involved in all of those activities, advocating for the kids of this district. And it takes time out of your own personal experience. But it's valuable, and that's what great school board members do. And then we have ineffective school board members. And you've talked about this when you go to MASB meetings, in your workshops, when you have single issue people. They run for the board and on a single issue, that's all they want to talk about. That's pretty ineffective, and just kind of rambling at meetings. We want board members to always be respectful and collaborative, and you have to come to the meetings prepared. I mean, a great deal of thought goes into putting these packets together that come out, and you need to be prepared as you come in for the meetings. This is kind of a interesting one about rubber stamps. Sometimes the community is critical of boards of education. All they do is rubber stamp what the superintendent says. Well, if the board has truly worked as a team, truly worked with the superintendent, and asked the right questions and hard questions, and held the superintendent's feet to the fire, then there's nothing wrong with a 7-0 vote. If you've done those things. But if you haven't been prepared, and you just come to the meeting and raise your hand and vote yes, then I would say that you would fall into the ineffective range. School board members micromanage rather than focusing attention on district-wide policies. We're going to talk about micromanaging a little bit later. And it's a fine line, but it's a line that in the Baldrige process we've talked about a lot. And I've got some slides later on that will address that. And finally, ineffective school board members use their position as an opportunity to put forth some kind of agenda that has little relevance to student achievement. And I think, just seeing how this board operates, I think you would hold that in check and hold that person responsible. Okay. Whoop. Okay, are you a team? So what happens when board members get individual feedback, let's just have a little discussion on that. When you get some individual feedback from people out in the community, what do you do with it?
I read it, always thank them for their input, and try and sleep on it at least one night.
I look for patterns.
Okay.
Is this a one-off, I'm just mad at the world kind of thing, or is this, you know, multiple inputs that are very similar, or at least kind of can be categorized together?
And once you have that, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I read it, acknowledge they sent it, but I always copy it to my
To the
superintendent, so
Okay.
he is aware of what's going on, because there's a good chance that they've missed him in the communications totally.
Good one.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's valuable. If you're getting that kind of feedback out there, I think you have to let Jason know.
Chris, how many times you get copies of the same email from the board members?
Joanne?
And that's something you want to do as a board 100% of the time. Let your superintendent be the one that any of those communications come, it goes to him. Now, as a board member, you may talk with him about that, but you should not, you're, as an individual board member,
Right.
it always needs to go back to your superintendent every time. And there may be some things in there that you're, you know, that alarm you or whatever, it still goes to your superintendent.
Right.
Okay.
This next one, you know, I never really had to deal with, because we didn't have social media back then. In fact, we didn't even have newspapers. We still had tablets. You know.
Well, so you have to chisel in the stone, yes.
But I do think that's something that's worth talking about anyway, and I'm sure you know, perhaps had those conversations, but can be your best friend, but your worst enemy too.
Right.
And you've seen the problems that they've had in the northern Oakland County district, where there's lawsuits back and forth and so
Yeah.
forth about how social media was used, and so you know, just be careful. That's just an alarm. Be present in the meeting. I've been at school board meetings where I've seen people from the audience texting board members, and board members texting back. So you got to be mindful of the meeting within the meeting. And believe me, sometimes there's people out there, plants in the audience, that are just, you know, trying to get to board members. So be careful about that, and just be present in the meeting, and just make that your mantra. Okay, this is the time to turn and talk. So, South Redford Board and Superintendent, what's that mean for all of us? Recognize the superintendent as chief executive officer, board delegates implementation, and so forth. Let's have a little bit of discussion on that. Let's start at the upper left-hand corner. Somebody want to take off on that?
Well, we have this area, he has everything underneath it. We kind of tell him what to do. Here's what we expect, figure it out.
Figure it out. Anybody else on that? These are critical points here about what we're trying to accomplish this evening.
We also let him know what we should handle, and what's operations and what's governance.
Okay, let's go to number, the lower left-hand corner. Okay, let's hear some other voices in the room. What does that mean to you?
It's hard to see it, to read it. It's from over here.
Board and superintendent relationships are based on trust, respect, and understanding. Kind of Stephen Covey's word. You seek first to understand before being understood.
I think as board board members, especially some of us that are really in the schools or have kids still in the schools, we're privy to other information that the rest of the board doesn't get, or the superintendent. And it's that fine line of knowing that, and I know I struggled at the beginning, and you know I struggled at the beginning. I came out of the schools from PTO and that to separate the board member part from the parent and being involved in the schools. Because to me, we oversee what's going on in the district and we take the information that we're told. I always take it back to the superintendent. It's not my place as a board member to solve those problems or to even be in there meeting with teachers and stuff unless there's a reason and you have an appointment. So I think it's a fine line understanding what hat you have on and separating that you're just one individual, but you're one of 7 and the board makes the final decisions. But the community or the school and even other parents don't see you as just one person. So it's not black and white, it's a gray area of crossing that line.
Yeah, Michelle?
I'm all gray. It's hard, it's not hard anymore, but like when I first got on the board, it was extremely hard to separate parent, board member, and what I see in the buildings. I'm still in the buildings every day, and I see stuff, you know, and I listen and I hear people. And what I would want to have with you is complete and utter trust and respect for one another. You know what I mean? It's not that I demand it, I just want it.
Sure.
It should be just organic. You know what I mean? I don't like
It's a good term.
when I tell people, you know, like if I tell you something and it goes unlooked, you know, unchecked, that bothers me, you know, a lot. Because when you have children in the district, we see a lot more than any other board member see, you know. And I'm bringing it to the person I'm supposed to be bringing it to, you know. And I just want that. I want trust, transparency, understanding between us. You know, I struggled with that for maybe 2 or 3 years in the beginning. You know, I didn't know who to go to. What do I say? You know, and then sometimes things got overlooked and it made me really angry, but I can understand sometimes why it was, you know, but I would rather not have that sort of, you know, I want a really organic, really trusting relationship.
Good.
And I think,
I do too.
I think we as board members, if someone sends us an email or if we're out in the community and they approach us with a problem, we have a responsibility to let the superintendent know what that was all about. We tell them that a parent came to me and was worried about a bus or worried about whatever. And it's our, in my opinion, it's our responsibility to make sure we make the superintendent aware.
Good, thank you.
So can I just add to that, on that same issue? One of the things that you are a parent, and I would say to my principals 100% of the time, if a board member is in your building as a parent, they have every right to be there. But if they're there acting on behalf of a board, or they show up, you better give me a call. I better not hear from anybody else that there's a board member in the building doing something. So it's very important that you keep that line of communication. As a parent, you're in that building, you have every right to be, but if it's an issue related to anything other than you're being there as a parent, it must come to the superintendent. And I would make that very clear to my principals at all times. You know, don't let me have to hear from someone else that was occurring.
Let me introduce you to Lion Joanne.
I'm an honor.
Joanne, so to your point, I am also in the schools every day because I have kids in the school every day. And when I go into the school, as much as I would love to be Daniel Winston, the parent, I'm not seeing that way. As much as, I mean, it's just not. I would love for it to be that way. You know, I could literally be bringing my son to school, and I'm walking in there, how you doing? And it's like, high school board member Daniel. I'm just his parent.
Exactly.
And so that dynamic of just being his parent, the perception from those externally is not that. And so that's the struggle for me. I'm just at my son's basketball game being a parent, but I'm always to school board members in people's mind, in the parents' mind, when they know that's what I am. So that's oftentimes my personal struggle is I just want to be my son's dad right now.
Absolutely.
Put on my cheerleading skirt and cheer for my son.
Exactly.
Not come with all the world's problems with South River.
Exactly. And so the thing that you start to build that, your mantra will be, you know, thank you for sharing that. I will share it with the superintendent. You should hear back from him. You should hear back from central office. He'll decide who will answer that. But start to back yourself out of that, because it's so easy for that to happen, because you're there, you're visible, you're in the community all the time. All of you probably, you're there. But I think you, in this role, you need to now say, you know, thank you for your input. You know, I will share that with the superintendent, and someone should get back with you. And then that's where, you know, you develop that trust with your superintendent, and you begin to have that level of communication. But start to back yourself out of that. It's so easy to do.
Just hang out with me, Jason. So I'll just say, here he is right here.
He's at the basketball game, right? But yeah, turn it over, whatever it is. You're right. It's just hard for others to not want to put you in that role. But that's where you say, you know, thank you. Always appreciate that you're letting us know what's going on. I'll be sharing that with my superintendent, and you should be hearing back from them.
You know, and it is a tough role, and it's also a tough role for employees. You know, it's parent-teacher conferences, and you're meeting with the teacher, you know, and your son or daughter isn't performing it, and not yours, but because they would be at the top.
Yep, he is.
But if there are issues, it's, you know, there's always a little bit of anxiety on both people's parts. And so those are difficult to work through.
Thank you for lifting that, though, because that's real.
Yeah, it is.
So we appreciate you having the confidence to say that here, and so that, you know, new superintendent realizes that, you know, when you get an issue, you're going to be bringing it to him. Thank you for lifting that tonight.
Okay, we've already talked, I think, about the board delegating the implementation, and we're going to cover that a little bit more. And I think it's important as this relationship develops that, you know, Jason and you, you know, follow agreed upon protocols for communication and requests for information. And as, you know, that's not going to happen tonight, but you know, as you individually, you know, have your meetings with Jason, I think these are good conversations to have. I'm not doing very well on this. There's only an up and a down. Where's my tablet?
Come on, zookeeper.
How come it's not moving?
Is that red?
Jason just had to scare it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. All right. You know, just a couple things to think about, and I'm just going to go through these quick. You know, who makes the agenda? Well, typically the agenda is put together by the board president and superintendent, but with input from board members. But you know, individual board members shouldn't be calling the superintendent saying, I want this on the agenda tonight and so forth. All that should go through the board president. That's one of the roles of the board president. How do we handle cell phones during board meetings? Turn them off. What happens when there's a split decision on an issue? Every issue is not going to be a simple one. And sometimes people are on different sides of the fence, but once we have a vote, then that's the direction we're going. You know, we can agree to disagree, and we do it honorably, but then we move on. How does a member, you know, get something on the agenda? You know, they get it to Shirley. And how do we hold ourselves accountable to each other? And I don't think, you know, you call each other out at board meetings or anything like that, but you have, you know, you can have private conversations, and you can work through these issues. I'm convinced of that, and that's one of the reasons we went through this exercise. And what's your role with the board president, superintendent, and other members? I think we've, pretty much covered that piece. Okay, Joanne. Okay, this is I just want you to read that first sentence about practices and operating agreements. And this is so important. How boards conduct their business is as important as the business they conduct. We want it transparent, we want it open, we want discussion, we want all of those things. And because there's an audience, people watch. And when they watch, they absorb, they take in whatever information, whatever bias they have, they walk out the door and report it to somebody else. So it's how we conduct our business is critically important, and as important sometimes as whatever business we conduct. The second one we talked about, and thirdly, just kind of getting to your point, your citizens. And unless there's a quorum and the meeting's called to order, you're citizens, just like all the rest of us are citizens. You take on that special role once this quorum has been established. Okay. Again, the practices and operating agreements. We've covered these. Let's go one more. I'm kind of mindful of the time. Okay, practices and operating agreements. Preparation. Preparation. I guess if there were room, we could have said it 5 or 6 more times. But when you get that board packet, you got to go over it. You jot your questions in the margins. If you have questions ahead of time, you need to get them answered. You don't need to bring them to the board table and blindside anybody. Try to get all of that stuff done. Consensus sometimes isn't reached. You can try, and I've always favored consensus over votes, but the way it works, Robert's rules, we vote, and sometimes the votes may be 4-3. Hopefully not every issue, but sometimes they are. But once the votes are taken, the votes are taken. Again, all of the discussion, it's got to be candid, honest, and if everybody is frequently communicating with each other, and people know, if people are truly listening to each other, I think that begins to build the empathy and understanding between board members, and that's where you can build consensus. And again, whatever the vote, that's the vote, and then you move on. Okay, this is kind of a sidebar. You've got bargaining coming up, and board members become targets. And if the association or individual members of the association feel that they have an in with a particular board member, you can rest assured you're going to get lobbied, you're going to get phone calls, you're going to get all kinds of interactions. Could be emails, could be phone calls, could be bad messages, could be a number of things. But individually, remember, you're just a citizen. So you're not responding. And if you have people coming to the board during bargaining and want to complain about the process, the board president can very easily just say, we have a bargaining process, and I'll pass that over to the bargaining team. End of discussion. You're not going to get into a bargaining session out here in the public. You're not going to get into bargaining session with members of their bargaining team or the executive board. Anytime that you get, any kind of community members, parents, we talked about this, or employee, if you complain to you or just kind of bending your ear, you really owe it to the superintendent to say, here's what I heard. And the superintendent needs to react to that. And again, avoid being lobbied. I mean, it's bargaining 101 from the MEA handbook, is to lobby individual board members, with the hopes of a better contract. And you just need to avoid that.
Bill? Bill?
Yep.
I know even back when you were in superintendent, we did not have the superintendent sitting on the negotiating team. Can you explain why?
I can tell you this, and Joanne, I want you to jump in on this too. It's always good to have arm's length, distance. But one of the contracts that I was superintendent, because there's some interim stuff, I actually negotiated it, kind of against our norms. But it helps to have the superintendent to be able to be at arm's length. That way, when there's questions coming from the audience and they're hammering away at Shirley or hammering away at Jason, you can say, we have a process. And the process is we have a bargaining team and we'll relay that to the bargaining team. So it's really the arm's length. Joanne?
Same thing. And I had some really contentious contracts. And again, I never, as a superintendent, I always want there to always be that possible that I'm the last one that one can come to in the end, to be a part of that process in terms of maybe being able to mediate or whatever. But at the very end, no, I never said, I was aware of what was going on at all times, but I was not on the negotiating team.
Yeah.
That's where one of my assistants.
And it's a little complicated this time because you've got Jason, who is technically, he's the superintendent nominee elect, coming into office or into the position in August, and Brian's still here. So in many respects, he's still acting as the assistant superintendent and chief negotiator. So the question becomes, can he, at this point, still remain as the chief negotiator? And
so here's my follow-up question then. If he's taking over in August, and we may not have a contract settled by then.
If he's any good, you will. How's that to put pressure on? Strike that from the record.
But once he becomes superintendent, if he's on the negotiating team.
I see what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of different scenarios that can play out. Is it going to be a full-blown contract? Is it going to be an expedited bargaining where you're going to have just 3, 4, or 5 topics that you're going to talk about and money's going to be the issue, or how's it going? And it could be that you have a drop-dead date, that we'll begin expedited bargaining, and if you don't have a contract, June 15th or June 30th or some such thing, then all bets are off and we start again. And then at that point, Jason's out of the picture.
Okay.
Does that answer that?
Yes, it does.
Okay. You can hit the next slide. Okay, so we're coming back to the operating norms over and over and over again. That's one of my themes. Always has been, always will be. But the board is, role is to govern and oversee the management of the district. And that's an awesome responsibility. And you delegate the authority, to Jason for the day-to-day operations. Not just to Jason, but all the people that working in central office, teaching staff, drivers, everybody else.
But Bill, the one thing that you don't want your board doing is the board deciding who in central office they choose to go to get something resolved. It still needs to go through the superintendent, and then the superintendent will decide his designee for whatever the issue is that's brought to that superintendent.
Yeah.
So board members don't decide, I think I'm just going to go to HR and have HR deal with this. No, it still goes through the superintendent, and the superintendent will invite HR in if that's what he feels is appropriate.
Because if Jason's going to be held accountable,
yes,
he's got to know what's going on
all the time.
Okay. One of the operating norms is that we do follow and respect the chain of command, And we talked about that ad nauseum tonight but it needs to go to eventually to Jason to work through.
Bill, there is an exception to that, though. I must admit, whoever the treasurer is might be working with the,
Oh, yeah,
with the
right,
bid,
right.
so there are exceptions to that. Okay,
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, generally
Okay.
speaking, who's the
Right.
treasurer? Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not uncommon for the treasurer to be working with
Right.
Linda.
The two lions.
The two lions.
That was that great. Well, I can't think of a better combination. But to go through the warrants, to go through all those certain things
Yeah.
ahead of time, I think that all of that's appropriate.
Right.
And that's one that you sign off on immediately.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
The delicate balance. Daniel, that's your delicate balance. And, we need to be mindful of each other's roles. And we need to be sensitive to it, that's all. That's all that we're trying to imply. Okay, again.
Yeah.
Especially with none of us having golden retriever as our dominant.
Okay, so, as we've,
But a lot of secondary. Right?
Yes,
We
a
had
lot of
a couple
secondary.
a lot of secondaries.
Right, yes, you do.
Okay, so board's a policymaker, superintendent's responsible for carrying it out, and with the Baldrige training that we've had through the years, we've talked over and over again about above the line and below the line. So let me show you a couple slides, just to reequate you. You can get your
I
cameras
had
out.
it drilled in my brain.
Get your cameras out and take photos. But there's all kinds of relationships that exist. And the board is an entity unto itself. So right now, the topic or the title of this particular slide is Baldrige and the board. So right now, the board president and the membership, you're meeting all of the federal and state requirements. You've set the board priorities, the missions, the goals, the priorities. I see them up on the wall with your goals and your mission statement. And generally, I don't know if you're still doing this, but strategic results. Are the customers satisfied with the work of the board? I don't know if you're surveying the membership or if you're surveying others about the board itself, but if you're not, that's something you might consider. So where does the board work below the line? You work below the line tonight because the board has mission, goals, and so forth. And tonight we're meeting to go over your internal processes. You're working on it. This is the work of the board. This is operational stuff that you're working on. You're not doing policies right now. You're doing operational stuff. So in Baldrige terms, tonight, as a Board of Education, you're working below the line. And this is about the only time you get that chance. Except when you have board meetings. And when you have board meetings, they're all below the line because you're doing that work. But you're doing that work in relationship to your policies, your norms, and so forth. That's when you work below the line. Next slide. Okay, so here's Baldrige basics, just kind of overall. The strategic piece is above the line, and that's where we talk about leadership, strategic planning, we have goals and measures, and then everything else below that line is what the superintendent and the employees of the district are responsible for. They're the process management pieces. They manage and operate the district based upon all of your strategic planning, which is above the line. And then they report back to you the process results, translate those into strategic results. Take a photo of that too. Yeah, I want to tell you, I had to dig deep into my my old South Redford boxes to come up with some of these lines. Okay.
Dr. Weber, would it be possible for us to get copies of that? Because some of it was really small, and I had a hard time
Sure.
with these old eyes seeing it.
I have a hard time right here. Yeah, we can. We're kind of running short on time, but ethical procedures. Once again, the board, you work in the best interest of the entire community and the kids of the community, and that's just the ethics of what we do. And I think every MASB workshop, every MLI workshop, that's what you're going to hear. Okay. In ethical procedures, and one of the reasons we went through this exercise, we subordinate personal differences in order that the board, the actions of the board can be effective. We have to understand and recognize where we're coming from, how we're going to, if Jason's making a recommendation, how is that going to be heard? How is Daniel going to perceive it? How is Lori going to perceive it? How is Cheryl? How is Misha? How is Shirley? How is Stephen? How is Amanda? How are all you going to perceive that? And you probably aren't all going to perceive it the same. That's where you got to have the discussion, the respectful discussion, in order to make good decisions. Sometimes, it's not often, but sometimes there's differences on the board that are pretty difficult to reconcile. And those sometimes have to go through the superintendent. Tough conversations if you get into those, I'll tell you that. But every once in a while, there'll be some friction that's taking place that the superintendent may have to have some offline conversations. And finally, the board members themselves need to follow all of these policies and procedures. And it's, I don't want to use harsh terms and say that if they're not following them, that they have to be called out. But they have to be called out. You have to have good conversations, could be offline conversations. Something like, Cheryl, you said this at the last board meeting, and I'm not sure that's really, what was meant, what was appropriate. But you can do those kind of things offline.
Absolutely.
And it just makes, a whole lot more sense.
Absolutely. They should be private and personal. You don't have to tell everybody
Yeah.
about it. It's that.
Don't even have to go to the woodshed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we've said this
Okay.
continuously, but it's a two-way street. You not only keep superintendent informed, he darn well better be keeping you informed.
Absolutely.
And if there's something comes up at a school that doesn't matter, in the weekly update or daily updates or whatever they are, you need to know about it. Because when your phone starts ringing and you've heard nothing about it,
Absolutely.
and it could be with social media, it could be that it's out there before Jason ever hears about it. That's a possibility, but for the most part, if it's not, you really need to get that information out as quickly as possible.
And then follow up with what he's doing about it is what he would do after,
Right.
He's notified you what is going on.
Here's what
Always
we're
make
doing.
sure- Here's what we're doing. So that if someone, and citizens will come to you, whether you're at a basketball game that night or whatever, and something happens, you want to know, the superintendent is aware of this, he is working on it, and thank you very much. But that's what the superintendent follows up with.
Sometimes you'll implement policies or you'll do something, and it sounds like such a good idea. And then when it hits the street, all of a sudden, your neighbors or parents or other people start calling you and say, what world were you guys thinking about? How's this going to, play out? And if that's happening, you've got to let the superintendent know so you can diffuse those things.
Right. Damage control, it's called, right?
Yep. These are things I know you already do, but
Right.
you need to just listen courteously the citizens with questions and complaints, and then, the easy part is just refer them to the appropriate person, which is superintendent, who then puts it off to whoever they do. Finally, you need to, support the superintendent as the administrator of your board of policies. And if the superintendent is not following out the board policies, then that's another issue. But if all the policies are being, filled out and are followed, then, you need to support those efforts. And, superintendents don't get off scot-free here. You gotta hold the superintendent responsible for acceptable standards and the results in the operation of the school system. That's what the superintendent does. And if you look at your Baldrige chart that we had, you had the analysis of the strategic results. That's that stuff. So working with, the board, you just need to crystallize all those educational ideals. And I know that with your mission statement and goal statements, they can't be just something on the wall. You gotta talk about it. You gotta read them every meeting. And relate to them every meeting and talk about, if you're doing something and you're passing something, you can always say, and this relates to goal number 1 or goal number 2 of our strategic plan. And this is part of the operational thing that we're doing to implement that. Because you always want to tie everything that you're doing back to what you said you were going to do. Plus Delta time.
Ready?
Who keeps track of plus Delta? Annie?
Verbalize it. Actually, Chris does it. Wonderful job. That was already established.
Okay, so let's just do a little plus Delta here about what we did tonight, and let's look at if there were positives, what they were, and if you picked anything up along the way.
Well, I myself found the personality test very interesting. I've done them several other times, but that was good again to see where everybody was landing up.
I'd like to thank Dr. Weber and Joanne. This has been fantastic. Hopefully, we can do it again. Another workshop. I just felt that the board needed this, and I appreciated it. And I was gonna kind of ask the board members what did they think about it. But thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, I can say what I thought about it. I really like the personality. It brings to light like all of our differences, but also all of the stuff that we have in common that you may not know. I think it'll help me better understand where everybody is coming from, but sometimes I don't always do that. You know what I mean? It's just, we're different people. So these things give me a better perspective of how this person reacts or how Shirley reacts or how, and I think that will help us move forward. And when we do board policy and all of those things, like you said, we need to have more conversations about how we feel about stuff, I think. More so, because I don't think we do that enough, as a board. I think it would help tremendously in our quest to be cohesive again.
Anyone else?
Going once. Okay, let's look at the deltas. Opportunities to improve.
I think
I
that's
get-
gone.
What?
I think that's gone.
I don't, evidently there
I
are
mean,
no
one quick note, just,
opportunities.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
just the slides was small. I think that's the one thing really couldn't read sometimes, so I just.
Okay, good point.
Yeah, I mean, besides that, though, I think the information's good, just for like kind of, what did I say? Yellow and red, just sometimes you couldn't read, so.
And we can send you this PowerPoint
Okay,
also,
that'd be
so
great.
that you can just kind of go back to it on your own. We'd be more than
That would
happy
be
to do
great.
that. Okay. It's not anything in there that,
Yeah, we can just.
we put this together for you tonight, so it's yours. so-
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because it was fine for me, but you know, my colleague, you know, Steve, you know, needs big 75 letters, so.
Well, Chris will send the PowerPoint to you.
And I'm a note taker, so I like kind of scribbling on the handouts and making my own personal thoughts about it, so,
Thank
yeah. I'm with you,
To
Dan.
Chair, I'm not sure if this is a delta, but I liked when Dr. Weber was talking about surveying people on how we're doing as a board and also surveying each other on how we're doing as a board. And we haven't done that yet. I know I've only been here since August, but I think that would be something for us to think about doing. Just to see where we're at, maybe it could be like a quarterly thing. Plus delta ourselves.
That's a good idea.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Are you talking about as the district as a whole or as the board?
The board.
I think she means both.
Both.
Yeah.
Get feedback from the public and then get feedback amongst ourselves.
I think that's good, because if we don't, know and understand what the community that we serve thinks, I don't think we're serving them in a great capacity.
Well, I just want to comment on that. When I was running, the majority of the community do not know what we as board members do.
I think they should, though.
Yeah, well, when you're out there and they ask, I had to explain to a lot of people
Yeah, I do
what
too.
a board member
I still have to
role
explain it to
was.
them.
Yes, they didn't know.
And that's why I wanted to clarify which she was referring to, because a lot of people have no clue what the Board of Education does.
Exactly.
But they certainly have opinions on what the district is doing, so.
You know, taking it just a step further with, going back to Baldur's days, individual teachers, I don't know if they still are, but, survey, not only the kids, how am I doing, and then depending on the age level, it could be a smiley face or a frown, or, and also the parents, and the principal does the same with, the parents, and so on, and transportation department, do it for all the kids who are, riding buses, and the HR department can do it, just the school staff, how are we doing, all of those, and those are all key pieces of Baldrige about, trying to get your data back.
Amanda, can I read this? Need to know what the community thinks about how the board is functioning, as well as an internal analysis of. Is that accurate?
Well, for the public to say how we're doing as a board, but then also for the board to say how we're doing as a board amongst each other, like two separate things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And there are instruments already developed just for the board itself, to be able to do that. And it's board self-evaluation, and people would get it. And they go to you, Shirley, or some of your designee, and then it'd be reported out at a board meeting about, here's on a Likert scale, 1 to 5 or 1 to 7, here's how we're doing, here's where we need to improve.
Okay.
We've done it in the past, just years and
Yeah.
years ago as a board.
Yeah, but isn't that what we're doing when we're self-evaluating?
It's different from Baldrige. It was a standalone piece that was geared, it drilled down more about how we interact and work together as a board. Baldrige is more broad.
Yeah.
We had a separate piece we tried. It's probably been,
Way more years than I can remember.
yeah, way back. It was a separate piece. It was pretty simple, simple questions, and we rated
There was
ourselves.
about 10 or 12 questions. something like that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like open-ended questions for the public, since they don't know what we do all the time. It can be streamlined to, like, how are we presenting ourselves? And how do you feel about us upholding our mission statement? Stuff that they can understand, not just like asking them their opinion where they can write down a whole bunch of complaints, like they did in the surveys for the superintendent.
That's good. That it?
You want to close with a quick summary, or? Yeah, go ahead. I can. Okay, finally. Just, some key agreements and understandings. So what, as I think about the meeting summary, I think the Plus Delta took care of some of those pieces. But going back, what we were trying to accomplish was the whole notion of, number one, you guys have done a phenomenal job. You have mission statements, you have goals, and we were just trying to reiterate that how important it is to base everything that you do on relationships and trust and carrying out the mission statements and how you interact with each other and how you interact with Jason. And those were the 5 pieces that we came in today wanting to accomplish. And I hope we did. So thank you very much, and we appreciated it.
Thank you very much.
And we'll stick around for a few minutes if you have questions, and I know you have a tour.
What smell is the green one?
Thank you, young lady.
Is it lime? Mint.
So how many people on the Detroit Lions are Lions? I'm just asking.
It is mint.
Just an observation.
They need some more lions that are truly lions.
If there's nothing else that comes before this board, I adjourn it at 7:52.